Okay, so I already did vintage denim, vintage shoes, vintage jewelry, leather, suede, velvet. So we are on to sweaters this time, and we're gonna start off here. Oh, my screen recording needs to be a little bit bigger. Hold on. Alright, fixed it. So, they're gonna be mostly novelty vintage sweaters as opposed to more like quote-unquote normal ones. And most of the sweaters I will be showing you I found on Etsy, most of which I think the listings have been sold out, but hey, if you like one of these, you may be able to search up on Etsy and find it, who knows. So this first one I like because it's simple, but the music note design is very whimsical. So for someone who's maybe more, you know, reserved and not super colorful, this would be something that would get you a little bit out of your comfort zone, but still be fun, you know? I really like this because this leans into that kind of, I don't know if you could call it masculine, but like the diamond style sweaters that you see a lot in men's vintage fashion, but this is a more feminine floral kind of take on it, and I like that the floral pattern is a little bit unpredictable. Like, it's not like a checkered pattern, it's sort of a little bit more random, it appears to be. I really like this a lot. A little bit of scalloping you can see at the top of the neckline there. And this one is very, very nice. I like that the floral design continues along the bottom and on the end of the sleeves, that it's not just present here. And you can see in the stitching on the body of the sweater that there is a crisscross sort of diamond design. I think that is done by having looser stitches in the place where you want the lines to show up for the diamonds. I'm familiar with crocheting, but not with knitting, so for most of these that are knitted, some of the techniques that were used to make them I might not be super familiar with. But anyways, we have a nice little color block here. It's not exactly short sleeve. This is more like a 3/4 sleeve, but I do like the color block. I like that I know right away that this is like late 80s, early 90s, because it's kind of got a wide dolman sleeve sort of look. And this one is interesting because it's a sweater, but it does have fabric elements, so it's got the collar and you've got the end cuffs there and the waistband, so it's similar to a crew neck in structure, but not exactly. And you have these diamond coat of arms type designs going on. And we have another number that is probably from the 80s or maybe early 90s with some abstract design going on here. And some longer cuffs than you might normally see, but these are kind of well, I would assume they're meant to be rolled up and not just worn like that. At least that's how I would wear them. But I also have short arms, so I roll up cuffs pretty often because of that. This is a very nice autumn sweater. There are lots of novelty vintage sweaters that are Halloween that you can find, but this one is purely autumn, which is very nice to see. You've got some lace detailing around the collar there, and it looks to continue on the end of the cuffs and the waistband. And I really like how detailed it is. That's very nice. So this doesn't have a specific design, it just has some texture to the stitches being used, which I really like. It's like sort of a crisscross, but also a wavy sort of feel to it, which looks very nice. We've got some color block action. The sleeves are a little plain in comparison, and I can kind of tell that the sleeves were probably sewn on as opposed to stitched on like a knit or crochet stitch, because it looks kind of bulky at the seam there and on the underseam of the underarm as well. This is quite nice. So it looks a little bit short, but it's not short enough to be cropped, I don't think. And the sleeves look a little bit short, but it is also a little bit wide, so that might be the reason why. But you can see on the sleeves that the bow motif does continue, which is very nice to see. Okay, we have a 80s number here. We've got some gathering. Now, this wouldn't really be gathered the way that you would gather a sleeve when you're sewing. This is like stitched to be that way, I think. And not sure if there are the presence of shoulder pads, but it looks like there might be. And you've got sort of a V shape with the floral pattern going in and out in a color block fashion. This is very cool. It's almost like lightning, but not exactly. And on a lot of these sweaters, you will see the cuffs being, the cuffs and the neckline and the waistband being just the ribbed kind of style, because that's sort of easy to do. So this one has some gathering there at the shoulders, you can see, but it's got a crossover design with some beading detail, which is very nice. I have a vintage sweater that has some beading on it that I added some extra beads to. So we got some texture going on here with some yarn that's a little bit fluffy, and you can also see some metallic yarn used. Very nice. That's probably from the 80s as well. And we've got some more scenic going on. That autumn sweater from before was very scenic, and this one is as well. And you can see that it's also kind of asymmetrical, because this sort of purpley red continues down this sleeve, but not this one, which is interesting. And this is a wintry sweater, but it's interesting because it's not Christmas colors. It's a very pastel, almost spring, but you can see that these are supposed to be snowflakes, and this is supposed to be snowfall over a cabin and some trees. So it's pastel winter, which I quite like. And then we have a more traditional Christmas scene sweater. I really like this. This reminds me of a work of art depicting some kids sledding in front of a house on Christmas. It was from the house I grew up in, and it's in the house that I'm in now, hung up. It's very nice, and this sweater reminds me of that framed piece of art, so that's really cool. So this is definitely 80s. Looks like there's some shoulder pads attached, and we've got some color blocking in a very wavy fashion. And we've got some fish with some texture to them, and also the sleeves and the neckline has a scallop going on. So this is cool. And it reminds me of If you were if you were a girl that was in middle school or high school in the early to mid 2010s, you might remember the trend of the crackle nail polish that looked kind of like this on your nails. That's what this reminds me of. So this is a fun neon sweater with, I guess these are flowers and these are leaves. I'm not totally sure. And it looks like the neckline and the waistband are made out of a different type of yarn, like a different thickness perhaps. This is a very nice vintage orange sweater. Orange is my favorite color, so I had to include it. But we do have some very interesting patterns in the stitching here. So this is a fun autumn sweater. These are clearly leaves, but then the branches are the same color as the leaves, which is interesting. So it's autumn, but it's kind of abstract autumn, I would say. And we have some asymmetrical design here, which is very fun. You could say this is like an abstract kind of rose, like these are the actual roses and then this is the stem with the thorns maybe. We have more autumn. This one is a little bit more clear about the foliage being depicted. And you've got what looks like maybe some leaves dangling off the sleeves there. So this is nice. So this is a pastel sweater that's got some fabric elements for these added, not roses. I wouldn't say that's a rose. I don't know what kind of flower that is, but anyway. And then here's the same thing where it's fabric added onto a sweater in a patchwork kind of way. I think that's really cool. We got more autumn here. Can you tell I like autumn? This one I think maybe is more towards like the mid or late 90s. It's less dolman sleeved, so that's why I say that. This one is more 80s, definitely. That's very dolman sleeve and that chunky neckline as well, and the way that this element with the embroidery and fabric elements here, the way that that's done screams 80s to me. This one I'm not too sure about. It's definitely vintage, but I can't exactly place it, but I do think that the design is cool. Again, we have the theme of foliage. And this is fun. This is a very subtle sweater with just some very minimal embroidery, but it's very lovely. And this one is that same combination of the fabric elements, but I do think it's interesting that the yarn portion of the sweater is all earthy autumn colors, and then the fabric elements is that touch of blue. I think it's a very interesting contrast. And we have more of that here with these fabric leaves. These ones very interesting, sort of like a fan. More dolman sleeve action with some basic watermelon design. This is from the 80s. Definitely. I just thought the penguins were cute, so I had to include it. And pretty long sleeves, almost as long as the body of the sweater. We've got a nice circus design here. I would say this is sometime in the 90s. This is definitely 80s, and I like that it looks like a fur shawl draped over top, but it's just part of the sweater. It's very clever design. We've got some texture to this one, you can see, but I like how it is all foliage with the single bird. It's very scenic, very nice. So we've got the return to the music note idea from earlier, but this time with a pop of color, so you got some variation there. This is very cute. This looks a little bit more handmade, so I think that this vintage piece was handmade, just because the stitches are a little bit bigger and the design is a little bit more simple, so I think that this is someone that followed a pattern, maybe. So this is interesting. It's got a shorter in the front thing going on, which is, you know, reminds me of the 2010s, but this is vintage though. This is very cool. Slightly fluffier white yarn in comparison to the other two, which we have seen in some of the previous designs. We've got some added fabric in this one, but this looks like the fabric is leather, which is very interesting. And we've got some darker colors as well, which is a nice break for some of the people that don't like the super colorful stuff. This one might be homemade, I'm not sure. The design is a little bit more intricate, so if this was homemade, then it had to be someone that really knew what they were doing. So we have the inclusion of a collar on the sweater again, and a very interesting stripe design where it goes from chunky, and then once you're over the bust, very, very small stripes, a little bit of gathering. Very, very cool, chunky color block type thing. We have another very thick neckline, which screams 80s. This is definitely 80s. That's kind of looks like Cyndi Lauper. Don't know if that's what it's depicting. This is very interesting, having that Dalmatian type of yarn included in a sort of springy floral design. And then you've got not really a beach, because it's just the sky, but it makes me think beach, like seagulls around a beach and you're looking at the sunset. Again, had to include it because I love orange, and also a little bit of variation from what we've seen because we do have a button-up element here. Another nice little autumn with some little line details to break up the end of the sleeves and the waistband, which is fun. Chunky neckline again. So we've got some more fuzzy and what looks like metallic, and also asymmetrical, because we've also seen some where one sleeve was elaborate and the other was not. Very 80s. Again, we got some texture going on, some beading as well, some more diamond motif. ABC. If you were a teacher, then that might have been right up your alley. This one's very nice. It's a very whimsical design, but it's sort of muted by the gray. But again, if you were someone who's not super adventurous, then maybe the gray would make it more appealing. This is fun because it's got some holes purposefully placed, and it looks like some of the types of yarn are thinner than the others that's being used. This is very fun. A nice fruit design. Nice for spring or summer. Well, maybe you wouldn't want to wear that in summer. Chunky neckline again. It's a hexagon pattern, which is fun to see. It almost looks like braiding, making up the lines for the hexagons, and then you've got flower design, but then this doesn't really look like flowers. I don't really know what that is, but it is interesting. This is really cool. Again, this is like a design, if you're more reserved, this would be that little pop of color that you could enjoy. We have another thick neckline, but this one has a little button closure, which is interesting, and the design looks a bit like a paisley sort of situation. London, and it's raining, get it, because it rains in London, lol. We have the return of the horse carousel theme. I do believe I already showed a sweater that showed off that design. This is really cool. So this is like an opulent upper class sort of vibe. You've got the cameo, you've got the vase, you've got the clock, a fan, I think, and then a golden rope, a sconce on the wall with flowers, and then more flowers. It looks very nice. And this is, I think floral? I don't know. I can't really tell. But this is more reserved again. Again with the pastel, but also winter, with the snowflakes. And more of that mixing the fabric with the yarn. And you've also got some lace there. Some lace and some metallic fabric going on. I like that. We've got an off-the-shoulder sweater. Well, not exactly off the shoulder. It's not really wide enough to be off the shoulder. But it is interesting because it's depicting sort of a summery scene, but the base color of the sweater is black, which is interesting. This one's really cool. You've got that asymmetrical button detailing. This one is off the shoulder. And this is probably 1980s, I'm gonna say. This is interesting because it's cropped, but the sleeves are a little bit longer than what you would maybe, because if it's cropped, then you would usually maybe get short sleeves or really long ones. And these are like longer than short sleeve, but they're not, they're more of a 3/4, I would say. And then we have actual short sleeves here. So this is almost like those wintry pastel sweaters, but this one is an autumn sweater that doesn't really have autumn colors with the exception of the little bit of yellowy orange here, which is interesting, and I do quite like it. So we've got some more pastel. This is just a very basic floral, but it is very nice. And this is definitely 80s because the chevron design popularized in the 70s carried on into the 80s, and I can kind of tell by the shape of the sleeves and everything. This one is really fun. So you got a little floral, but then you also have the checkerboard. And this, I wouldn't even say it's short-sleeved. I would just say this is sleeveless. This one is short-sleeved, and it's sort of just abstract. Like, you've got some stripes and you've got some random shapes here, but there's not really any substance. This is abstract, but it's a lot more detailed. It's sort of like a Picasso painting only in pastel and in clothing form is how I would describe this. But I quite like it. So this stripe and also color blocking going on here is very like late 70s, early 80s. This is like what I would expect someone who is into athletic stuff to wear from that time. This, it interests me because of the fact that usually in this style you would have a waistband that has the ribbed design that you can see around the neckline and off the shoulders there, but it doesn't. It just sort of ends, which I don't really see that much. See, yeah, like that, like normally it would have around the waistband. I like this. I like the pastel that's going on here, but the neckline and sleeves and waistband I kind of wished wasn't like a cream sort of off-white. I would like it to be maybe like a mint green to make all of it pastel, you know? I really like this because you've got the really nice sort of ribbing, what stitches? Cable stitch, I think that's called. You've got cable stitching, and then you've got this nice break in the middle here with the floral. So we've got some autumn going on, mostly autumn colors, but you do have some pinks and purples in there, quite nice. And there's also some cable stitching I can see. And this is very 70s. It's like a granny square that then gets added onto and turned into the sweater vest. Okay, so these are sweater dresses, and this is definitely from the 80s, although it's a bit less of a dolman sleeve than I would usually see. Possibly shoulder pads here, although I'm not totally sure. This is much older than any of the other pieces I've showed you, I think. I would say this is like 1940s, based on like the shape of the skirt and the way that these sleeves are gathered, or it's a very good imitation. This is 80s. We've got more of the diamond, more of the floral, more of the scallop. This is also 80s, I would say. We've got more beading, but the rest of the sweater dress itself is a little bit more on the plain side, I would say. This one is cool because it's got some belt loops, so clearly it was made to accessorize with. This one has the skirt with it, so I don't know if it's a two-piece or if it's attached, but you've got some more texture going on here, some more color blocking. Very nice. And this, sort of a paisley-ish design, I would say. A little bit more wide-sleeved, which makes more sense for the 80s. And I really like the fish sweaters. I don't know why. I just quite like them. And then this one's really cool with the light bulbs. And we've got more mixing with fabric. These sleeves are a little bit more wider towards the bottom, like a poet sleeve on this one, I noticed. And then this has the hands all over it, kind of spooky, Halloweenish, you could say. And then this has the belt with it. And this looks like sequins rather than beads like we've seen with some of the others. And this one is fun. You've got some fringe sort of beading around the shoulders and two button closures in the front here. You've got some more beading here. Again, I don't know if it's a two-piece or if it's attached. This one is super long. Like, in comparison to the others, this looks a lot longer, I noticed. This might be leaves. This might be another foliage type of design, although I'm not sure. Okay, these last few are from like the 1940s, 1950s, and they're not really novelty. They're not really super fancy like some of the other designs I've showed you, but I do think they're really cool because they're really like elegant and simple, and I just wanted to show you because I really like them. And also, I have seen some sweaters of this style before that were pink, like the sweater and the fur collar were pink, and I have also seen ones that were blue, and I want to say that I think those ones that I saw were like this, where it was like a white or like a off-white and it was dyed. I don't think that those ones that I saw that were pink and blue were originally like that, which is why I didn't try to find those photos to include them, because I don't think that's how they were before. Anyway, so thank you for watching this. I don't know what the next video of this style video that I'll do is going to be yet, so just stay tuned and I'll see you next time.